Hey everybody, how's it going? Well, it's Friday. Of course, I'm recording this ahead of time. And just wanted to let you know that or I should say, I extended the deadline in case you didn't see it of the Megalomania rewrite. I figured I noticed I did this last year too because I feel like there was too many things happening all at once. So I think it's actually best that you are given the time to really kind of concentrate on this feature assignment because I really wanted you to get it right. I mean, it's really an opportunity to kind of, like I say, flex your creative muscles. I hope you caught. I know we had two long lectures in a row. I'm hoping to keep this one a little bit shorter, but I hope you did catch like all the lesson on that. I'm actually going to talk about the chapters that are also related to that too. Um, but yes, I want you to make sure that you actually concentrate on that and also come up with an idea for your final assignment, which, once you get me that idea, then I will post that too. And then that will be due July 7th, which is the last day of classes. Um, so anyway, yeah. So everybody by now should have had their Megalomania assignments returned to them. I was actually impressed overall with the work there. And when we get around to it, I will actually show you what this was all what inspired all of this. Maybe I'll show you next week, I'm not sure. But again, that rewrite was delayed until the 29th, which is a week from yesterday, Thursday. So anyway, so you should, if you haven't contacted Bill yet or anything like that, it looks like it appears that just about everybody has, but you should. Okay. Um, and to get more context, more information, that sort of thing. This is supposed to be a straightforward news story, that sort of thing. Not necessarily as anecdotes in it, just basically straightforward. This is what happened. This is what happened. This is what happened. Okay. Everybody got that Bronson quit, but what I want to know is why did he quit? Okay. So that information needs to be in there and up high. Okay. Um, I think I've notified everybody of that situation. So that again is a breaking news story. Again, thinking of this person is on the level of somebody who's in charge of a really huge company and this is really important in the business world and blah 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 and all this maybe on the level of Disney. Okay, I'm not talking about like some company out there like it's like big but maybe not well known. I'm talking about Megalomania. You're supposed to envision like Disney. Okay. Um, all right. So yes, that'll be due again on the Thursday of next week. And then on Monday you have the I'm sorry. Been very busy this week, so I'm just kind of catching up with my thoughts. You'll have the feature assignment, okay, which is on the weather. As I'm looking at right now, I'm not seeing a lot on the discussion point. Remember, there's also a discussion point for that. I'm looking at class participation. And I really want you guys to kind of the first few I saw actually like they were not they were I'm really looking for like anecdotes, okay? I'm looking for people like talking about like, we've had like, what's interesting is that like the weather's actually gotten a bit cooler now, so it's which has been kind of weird. We haven't really had like the warmth of summer at all yet. So maybe you'd want to like get people talking about, oh my God, I went outside to go swimming and blah, blah, blah. And then like I nearly froze to death. I mean, that's like anecdotal information I'm kind of looking at here. I like to see introduced by a transition. Okay. So, make sure that you get that sort of thing in there. Anecdotes are important, especially in a feature story, because that's when you want to get more descriptive. You want to show more atmosphere, that sort of thing. Okay. And of course, then on Monday, you also have the idea for the final assignment. So, but let's talk a little bit about the feature story. Okay. Um, you know, Feature stories are basically something that like what I've been showing you basically is like what we've been talking about are essentially are news feature stories. But um, I mean, the whole idea like magazines are the ones that really kind of popularize them. And I'm not asking you to write long ass paragraphs like this, okay? But this is actually considered a story that's actually like because the greatest story ever written. But it's even though there's like these really long paragraphs, you could probably divide these up into smaller paragraphs into like more of a newspaper format, because it's written in that way where it kind of like mystifies suspense and provides some sort of suspenseful kind of narrative leading into the nut graph that I've talked about. Nut graph being the main point of the story. because eventually people want to have that main point of the story. They want to have the mystery revealed, and then they want the mystery to be constructed. Okay, so anyway, so basically, what it does is, again, the idea here is it doesn't necessarily give you what the story is about. It kind of almost like confuses you, but it leads you on with good writing, good atmosphere. That's what the description really comes in as a key thing. Okay, Frank Sinatra holding a glass of bourbon in one hand and a cigarette in the other stood in a dark corner of the. Of course, you all know what Frank Sinatra was. He was a famous singer for many, many years. He died 25 years ago. Between two, this is okay. This is written 1965. Okay, so two attractive but fading blondes who sat waiting for him to say something, but he had said nothing. He had been silent during much of the evening, except now in his private club in Beverly Hills, he seemed a lot distant. Staring out through the smoke and semi-darkness into the large room beyond the bar, where dozens of young couples sat huddled around small tables or twisted in the center of the floor. Okay, so there's all this atmosphere, there's all this stuff that's going on here. He's not happy. Even though he's like this big famous guy, he's not happy. There's irony here, okay, which adds to the mystery, okay? The two blondes knew, as Sinatra's four male friends who stood nearby, that if it was a bad idea to force a conversation upon him when he was in this mood of sullen silence, a mood that had hardly been uncommon during this first week of November, a month before his 50th birthday. Sinatra had been working on a film he disliked. He was tired of all the publicity starting. He was attached to his dating Mia Farrow, who's still around, who was not. It was a CBS documentary of his life, talking about the mafia ties he might have had. He's getting ready for this music thing. He's just piling on one thing after another that was just making him. But when it gets to Sinatra, it can plunge him into a state of anguish, deep depression. When it gets to Sinatra, it can plunge. Okay, I'm sorry. He was a victim of an ailment so common. The worst thing of all, and that's what this story is about, is that it was an ailment so common that people consider it trivial. But when it comes to Sinatra, it can plunge him into a state of anguish, deep depression, panic, even rage. Frank Sinatra has a cold. So the whole point is that it's like this ironic thing, mundane. Frank's, somebody has a cold. So what? Well, as this is the nut graph right here, basically. So this is why it's such a big deal. Sinatra with a cold is Picasso without paint, Ferrari without fuel, only worse. For the common cold robs Sinatra of the uninsurable jewel, his voice, cutting into the core of his confidence, and it affects not only his own psyche, but it also seems to cause a systematic nasal drip within the dozens of people who work for him. So basically, it shows that this whole industry just basically kind of just shuts down and makes him a crank. And that's what this story is about, and how he basically is dealing with it. We deal with the who, what, where, how, why, when. That's what the rest of the story deals with. But what it does is it kind of suspends animation for a while and leaves you guessing, tries to get you engaged in this thing. Is he going to die? Is he going to hit somebody? Is he going to kill somebody? What's going to happen? Nope, it's this. But then it paints the importance of this in a nut graph and why we should care. Okay. That's a magazine style, and the paragraphs are much longer. That's basically the only real difference. And that's even more descriptive and that sort of thing. Okay. So that's basically the feature assignment is something that I really want you guys to concentrate on and laser in on, because I have, I didn't want you to like be bogged down by the more megalomania stuff. And, some people even were asking for extension and stuff like that. So I want you guys to really just kind of focus on this. Okay. This is actually my view of things. So again, it's about the weather. Okay. And what I'm going to do is actually, I did something similar last week, but I want to show you like how basically, a story from the discussion points can be turned into a feature story, because I feel like that's actually a good process in showing how, the whole system, or the whole, sorry, I just want to call this up on YouTube. How the whole thing is actually constructed, and how it can be constructed from just like some very simple anecdotes that were provided by individuals, and from top to bottom, and how they can become something engaging. Okay. All right. So let me just first actually I'm trying to actually get Jacob's story up, which is something I should have called up earlier. Oh, there we go. I'm sorry. Download. Okay. So yeah, so I'm actually Jacob went beyond that. Jacob actually, and you don't have to rely on the discussion points for the answers to your story or that sort of thing, or path or the substance for your story. But given that we're in this remote situation, I feel like it's the only thing. What I would typically do is if it was an in-class situation in person, I would actually have you guys interview each other, and then we'd actually have some real interaction going on here, but we cannot do that. Anyway, it's actually like taking a long time to come up. And I should have been a little bit better prepared for that. So you know what I'll do is actually I will go to this thing right here in case you haven't seen it. And again, I did something similar last week, but it was actually kind of buried in the middle of that video. So let's actually like show it here. It's really okay. Come on now. All right. It's kind of almost like unfolding. Here we go. Yeah. And that's actually me speaking above. So let's go. Oops. Hold on a second. Oh brother. I'm sorry. Processing. Thanks a lot. Okay. All right. Um, Basically, if you probably want like a big hint about how to handle things here, you just basically take like, I don't know, like I said, I haven't read through all these yet. Okay. But maybe just take like, let's just take three. I got Kaylee, Cameron, and Joseph. We'll copy here. Okay. And it's like reduce the point size so it's not too much in your face. Okay. No, actually, I'm sorry to do it right here. Let's just do this. Okay. So maybe we do like a little bit of paste special, cut paste. Okay. All right. So this was say Cameron, Kaylee. Copy down the first name here. I'm sorry. And that's Joseph Zarrell. All right. So anyway, this is what I do actually a lot now because actually like a lot of the interviews I do actually I get a transcript for. So I literally like will just cut and paste right from it. Just like you do with those news releases, you just cut and paste from it, and you can kind of shape it so that it actually is your writing. Shape it in your writing, and also fit it within the context of your story. Use transitional phrases, kind of go from one paragraph to the next or one point to the next. Okay. All right. So you do something like this. Joseph Zarrell, Joe, I forget what year you're in, but just say like maybe the Rutgers. I said the weather as of late has been pretty ridiculous. Some days it's waking up 70 to 80, 70 60 to 70 degree weather. We're supposed to choose for the next day. Again, well, I'm actually paraphrasing here because I can actually cut what he's saying without getting too wordy, and make it easier to read. Okay, and people tend to read paraphrasing and storytelling narrative before they do quotes. Okay, weather is so interesting, especially now because of how random it is. One day it can be beautiful, the next day it can just be disgusting and muggy out, which sounds like a pretty quote. Okay. So that's probably like one anecdote or one quote right there. Okay. All right. Then we got Cameron. Wait, spell your name right? Well, it's right there. Let's see here. Cameron Giuliano, on the other hand, said she really enjoys the weather. You do like a partial quote. Maybe even gets to experience full on. Maybe, if we only experienced cold or hot weather instead of both, I think we would get sick of the constant higher temperatures. That. Right? You got Kaylee Warden down here. Sorry if I forgot her name. I know it's just in front of me. Kaylee Warden. That she has been has been loving the weather this past week, as Rutgers is experiencing, has been good. She said this is her favorite time of year because you start to see everyone going outside more. And then, like I said, I mean, by paraphrase, you can actually cut down on things that don't sound so repetitive. The changing weather, she has been going out in the sun to do more work or simply bask in the sun. However, I know that the temperature will be going back down soon, and that is concerning because of global warming. Just all right. So there you go. Now I've just given you essentially like how now we can stick transitions in between those anecdotes and those quotes. I gave you just 3 of them right there. That's how simple it can be. And then, basically there's also a little bit more description in this kind of story. I can actually you try a little bit harder to try to paint a picture of what everybody's going through. Basically, we get to see what Joe is wearing, that sort of thing. Get a little bit, maybe ask those sorts of questions you're interviewing, or actually you make that observation in your notes wouldn't otherwise make. Like, what are they wearing? How are they acting? What's the expression on their face? That sort of thing. That's what kind of thing you do in a feature story. Okay. Now, here's again the big difference. Okay, so maybe I add in a transition right here. Add in a transition right here. Then I add in a transition right here. Okay. All right. But we have to come up with a theme for the story, kind of like liking the hot weather, but not liking the mixed situation so much. Okay. So, you try to think of maybe what would be a lead for this story. Okay. All right. So Rutgers students, we say they've been frustrated, gloomy weather recently, but they're pleased that the weather has at least gotten warmer. I know it doesn't sound like earth-shattering news, but again, it's supposed to be an engaging story, a light story. People like to kind of light features sometimes just because it's something relatable, like I talked about with the clothing and stuff like that. Okay, now here's the big difference. I wrote that like a lead, right? Only the big difference here is that's not going to be your lead. That's going to be your nut graph. This is how you can actually construct this feature story, so that actually you can kind of envision what would look like more as a straight news story, and kind of develop it into a nut graph. What you're going to do is you're going to take one of these anecdotes maybe from here, okay, and I would take maybe Kaylee's actually. That seemed to kind of echo the whole sentiment I just expressed there. Basically sum up the notes you got, which are right there in the discussion points, and you put it at the top. Now you have an anecdotal lead. We can always return to Kaylee. We don't have to actually leave her high and dry. A lot of times, actually, what they do in these feature stories is start off with a person, and then they end with the same person. But by starting off with Kaylee, we can actually drill down to maybe her personal frustrations or pleasantries or whatever that more specific to her. We can drill down and get more detail. Okay, so that's all. See what I did there? I just take essentially one anecdote to the top. So now it starts with Kaylee Warden said she's been loving the weather this past week. Rutgers been experiencing 70s and mid-80s. She said this is her favorite time of year because you start to see everyone going outside. With this change in weather, she has been going outside and doing more schoolwork, to read, or to simply bask in the sun. Nice. Like the idea of bask in the sun. That's good writing right there. It's good. Kaylee actually defined it essentially, but that was actually a good quote she had there. Essentially, that we turn into a paraphrase. Hopefully, but then we get into the however. However, I know the temperature is going to be going back down soon, and that's concerning in regards to global warming. Okay, and the nut graph. Okay, people are kind of looking for something here to basically give me at this point to give me an idea because it is a feature story, but it's also a news story at the same time. So they are looking for news. Okay. But they're hopefully by this point they're kind of hooked in by the stylistic writing and the engaging story, basking in the sun, the sense of being there, the sense of feeling. Yeah. Rutgers should say they've been frustrated by the gloomy side. It's fine. The gloomy weather recently, but they're pleased that the weather has at least gotten warmer. Okay. Like some students say it's nice to have a consistent idea what they're wearing. It's kind of what Joe got into. Yeah. See, blah blah blah. Or you could say like, or even like it's frustrating not knowing what to wear or what to. Right? That's it. Right? Okay. I'm back. Just give me 1 second here. Okay, so that was basically how the whole feature story was constructed. And basically the whole idea is that basically it's kind of almost like I said, it kind of serves like it almost kind of resembles like the stories we've done already, especially the story we just did on the football reaction story. But only that just maybe just a little more description, like I said about the basking in the sun was interesting to know. Kind of like where people are, who they are, what they're doing. And then at the same time, there's the big difference being there's an anecdotal lead and a nut graph. Okay. Was I provided the example actually right here. Kenji Demarest, the Rutgers student, said the recent weather in New Jersey has been amazing because the sunshine puts him in a great mood. I mean, not the most startling revelation in the world, but it actually kind of still leaves you hanging. Is some sort of storm going to plunge down on him? He enjoys the hot weather because he loves immersing himself in the sun rays, blah, blah, blah. Demarest loves the summer days because they allow him to lounge outside his favorite books. He loves engaging in social activities. I can grow vegetables, attend outdoor festivals, but actually it's just basically some sort of engaging narrative that kind of gives people a feeling of being there and leads into this nut graph. Sees among Rutgers and say that despite the heat waves they experience, they are pleased with the temperatures are below 80 degrees and because it allows them to participate in social gatherings. So basically it's like giving you the impression that it may be hot, but they're doing the best they can and they're even enjoying it. So all right. I also told you that the module has like some examples from the New York Times and that sort of thing. So please check out that. There's chapters 8 and 12. Chapters 8 and 12 basically chapter 8 talks about alternative leads. Okay. So basically meaning that there's just more than one kind of straight lead that as I've been hammering away. Like there's the summary lead, which is basically that typical lead because usually a lead will actually essentially summarize a story. Alternatively, maybe something along the lines that would kind of maybe give people kind of a slower pace but more engaging. Summary lead: a no smoking ban took effect Monday at Baltimore Medical Center that ends the use of parking, blah, 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 shelters. But if I was going to write maybe, as I said, like a sidebar or a follow-up, maybe a next day story, maybe I want to take a feature angle that I want people to read from top to bottom, something a little more engaging. Terry King's Monday morning might have been rougher than just about anyone else's. Again, we really have no idea what's going to happen next. We don't know if this person's going to be hurt. We don't know if this person's going to, it just leaves a little bit of suspense. Not only was it his first day not only was it the first day in his 16 years at Baltimore Washington Medical Center that he couldn't light up, but her job required her to remind people in the entrance about the brand new smoking policy. So, each lead is like a new item, a new thing, maybe even a new surprise. Okay. Each paragraph, I should say. Again, they give you the kind of like description, the comparisons. Summary lead: police are investigating the theft of more than $17,000 in cash. The alternative lead would be the Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. But he is not a suspect in the theft of 17, blah, blah, blah. So there's more of kind of like a backdoor angle to this. Okay. Buried or delayed leads. I mean, the leads I've been showing you, essentially, the anecdotal leads essentially are that. They're also called multi-graph leads, or essentially, well, again, the nut graph gives you he reveals the information. One thing, this is kind of a little bit off the point, but I'm not a fan of question leads. I hate those. I also don't like quotation leads because I feel like they're too vague because quotes are typically too vague. But question leads, I mean, I always say that, like, don't go fall down that trap. Okay. The questions, nobody should be asking questions in a news story. You should be providing the answers. Okay. Even if it takes a long time to actually get to that point. Okay. Through suspense, take that, then do that. But don't ask a question of the reader. Okay. That's so cliche too. It's so boring. And when you have a conversation with somebody, you ask people a question, don't you get annoyed by that? Like that, when you say, like, hey, did you hear, when they don't tell you, like, what's going on right away? Did you hear about the person who hit the car? Why don't you tell me what happened inside the car? Okay. Suspenseful leads, again, that's kind of falling along the lines of what we were talking about. It is the fire bell that signals the beginning of each firefighter's day. It's the same bell that summons firefighters action. It has the same bell that barks their last alarm. Okay. Bing, bang, boom. One kind of like hot take after another. Okay. Yes, irony is usually like a thing, like as I was showing you before with the Frank Sinatra has a cold. And the cold is like such a mundane thing, but like it was showing like a bit of the irony that's involved there. Okay. Um, and that being that it's actually like a much bigger deal when you're a singer like Frank Sinatra. Okay. Maybe or like a Rihanna or somebody like that. Okay. There's a chapter on feature writing. Like I said, there's also readings that are actually like also put as part of the module. Actually, I think, as I told last week, are actually serve as better readings resources. Um, but there are chapters in here that deal with it, like the alternative leads. Basically, when you look at like the different things that people look for, they give you examples of what people might be looking for in terms of a feature story. Things like food, shelter, and love. Babies are looking at things like breast milk. These are like the details you might be kind of like having a more acute examination of, that sort of thing. Descriptions. They also could be like certain story topics. After all, like a bad incident happens, you might want to explore it in a deeper way. More of a kind of mysterious ways. Okay. The lead of a feature story, the only requirement for the lead of a feature story is that it interests people, making them want to stay with the story to learn more. Okay, so that's what essentially the whole idea of actually of the suspense is supposed to do. The story can start with either a summary lead. Well, I would say in our case, we're dealing with alternative lead, which is again to be suspenseful, take it one step at a time. Okay. I'm just kind of scanning through here to see if there's anything else that would be like serviceable and usable that we could talk about. I mean, obviously, there's different types of features: historical features, adventure features. I did a historical feature 20 years ago about when the turn of the century, essentially, when they were looking back at the previous century and the major accomplishments. But the whole idea was to kind of bring it into now. So I did something on the Wright brothers, right? But what I did was actually drove down to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and actually wrote about what's going on there now in Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and how did they celebrate it 100 years later, and how do they look at it now, and what is it? And what I found out was interesting was actually kind of that surprise, suspenseful thing, is that it's kind of like there as a monument, but like the rest of the town kind of lives away from it. It's almost like something that happened there, but didn't really. Because the two Wright brothers were from Dayton, Ohio, and they actually only went to Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, because of the wind would actually get their airplanes going. So there were only like a few people in town who were like even had any kind of connection to like the people who were around back then, and they provided some interesting perspectives, but they were viewed as Wright brothers were viewed as like, kind of like oddballs, that sort of thing. And that was kind of the legacy that was carried on into the present day, is that they're there, but not. They're celebrated, but not. That was essentially what brought the story into now. Okay. Of course, there's participatory features where maybe you're right about like a rock concert or something like that, or whatever. I mean, there's all sorts of different types of features, and there's also first-person features, which, we don't deal with this in this class, but we deal with it maybe a later class. Maybe like people are going through like a certain affliction, or they're going through a certain saga, certain troubles in their life, and that sort of thing. And You're right about that. Okay. All right. Actually, so I want to kind of keep this short, just really focus on that. Talk about again the change deadline. Remember that, and what's due. All right. So that's all I have, guys. And again, I'll have a new video released on Monday. Again, remember what's due. You got the Monday. You got both the feature story and the idea for the last assignment. And then on Thursday, you'll have the Megalomania rewrite. All right. Thanks very much. And I will be talking.